In a peaceful neighborhood in the United States, a street sweeper made his routine stop at Joshua Burns' home. Unbeknownst to him, he was being filmed when a chance encounter with Shelby, a timid pit bull with a traumatic past, unfolded. What happened next took everyone by surprise, changing lives in the most unexpected way. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Stick around for a story that will leave you inspired and amazed. The suburban streets of Joshua Burns' neighborhood were quiet that morning, with the hum of a distant street sweeper blending into the sound of birdsong. Joshua, a kind-hearted man in his mid-30s, had recently adopted Shelby, a 2-year-old pit bull with soft gray fur and soulful brown eyes. Shelby had spent most of her life in a crowded shelter after being rescued from neglect, leaving her wary of strangers and hesitant to trust. Joshua had seen something in Shelby the moment he met her. Beneath her timid demeanor was a gentle soul yearning for connection. But adjusting to life in her new home wasn't easy for Shelby. Every sudden noise made her flinch, and she often hid under the table when visitors came. Joshua was patient, giving her time and space to feel safe. On this particular morning, Shelby was lying on the porch, her eyes fixed on the quiet street. The rhythmic sound of the street sweeper grew louder as it approached. Shelby tensed, her ears perking up. Joshua stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and noticed her nervous posture. "It's okay, girl," he said softly, crouching beside her. "That's just Mr. Carter doing his rounds." Mr. Carter, the local street sweeper, was a cheerful man in his 50s. He always greeted Joshua with a wave and a smile during his twice-weekly visits. Today was no different, except this time his attention was drawn to the pit bull on the porch. "That your new dog?" Mr. Carter called out, parking the street sweeper at the curb. His voice carried warmth and curiosity. Joshua smiled. "Yeah, her name's Shelby. She's still settling in." "She's beautiful," Mr. Carter said, stepping closer. Shelby stiffened, her body low to the ground, as she watched the stranger approach. Joshua placed a reassuring hand on her back. "She's a little shy around new people," Joshua explained. "She's had a rough past." "I understand," Mr. Carter said gently, kneeling a few feet away. "I've worked with rescue dogs before. Mind if I say hi?" Joshua hesitated, glancing at Shelby. "Only if she's comfortable. She's still learning to trust." Mr. Carter sat on the ground, keeping a safe distance from Shelby. He didn't speak at first, letting her observe him. After a few moments, he took a small treat from his pocket and placed it on the ground between them. "This one's for you if you want it, Shelby," he said softly, his tone calm and patient. Shelby's nose twitched, her curiosity piqued. She inched forward cautiously, her eyes never leaving the man in front of her. After what felt like an eternity, she sniffed the treat and took it, retreating quickly to Joshua's side. "That's a good girl," Mr. Carter said, his smile genuine. "No rush. We'll take it slow." Joshua watched, surprised by how natural Mr. Carter was with Shelby. He hadn't expected such patience and understanding from someone who didn't even know her. Shelby's reaction, though hesitant, was a small step forward. Unbeknownst to any of them, a neighbor across the street had been watching the scene unfold. Intrigued, they took out their phone and began recording, capturing the quiet interaction between Shelby and Mr. Carter. It was a moment of kindness, so simple, yet so profound. As the street sweeper rumbled back to life and Mr. Carter returned to his work, Joshua felt a flicker of hope. Shelby had taken her first step toward trusting a stranger, and it was a moment worth celebrating. But neither Joshua nor Mr. Carter could have predicted how this small act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change their lives, and Shelby's, forever. The following morning, Joshua woke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on the bedside table. He squinted at the screen, his grogginess quickly giving way to confusion. Notifications from social media platforms flooded his feed, all mentioning Shelby. "What in the world?" he muttered, opening one of the messages. It was a link to a video posted online. The footage, shot from across the street, showed Shelby's cautious interaction with Mr. Carter. The caption read, "Street Sweeper shows incredible patience with rescue pit bull." The video had garnered thousands of views overnight, and the comments were pouring in. "This is so heartwarming. We need more people like this in the world. Pit bulls deserve love too." Joshua's jaw dropped as he scrolled through the comments. He hadn't realized that their quiet moment on the porch had been captured and shared with the world. Later that morning, Mr. Carter pulled up in front of Joshua's house for his regular route. Before Joshua could say anything, Mr. Carter chuckled, holding up his phone. "I think we've gone viral, huh?" "You saw it too?" Joshua asked, stepping out onto the porch with Shelby at his side. "Hard not to," Mr. Carter replied, still smiling. "My daughter sent me the link this morning. I had no idea anyone was filming." Shelby, still wary, stayed close to Joshua but seemed slightly more relaxed in Mr. Carter's presence. Her tail gave a faint wag, a small but meaningful sign of progress. As the day went on, the video continued to spread. Local news outlets picked it up, and soon journalists were reaching out to Joshua and Mr. Carter for interviews. People were drawn to the story of a timid rescue pit bull and the street sweeper who showed her kindness. It wasn't just a feel-good moment, it was a reminder of the power of patience and empathy. Despite the sudden attention, Joshua remained focused on Shelby. She was still adjusting to her new life, and he didn't want her to feel overwhelmed. But he couldn't deny that the outpouring of support from strangers around the world was inspiring. That evening, as Joshua scrolled through more comments on the video, one in particular caught his eye. "My rescue pit bull had the same reaction to strangers. It's amazing what patience can do. Keep up the great work, Shelby." He smiled, glancing at Shelby, who was curled up on her bed. "You're touching more lives than you realize, girl." But as heartwarming as the attention was, Joshua couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The video had started something bigger than any of them had anticipated. What he didn't know was that Shelby's story was about to take an even more unexpected turn. The viral video had reached places Joshua never imagined. Messages from strangers around the country flooded his inbox, but one email stood out. It was from the director of the animal shelter where Shelby had been rescued. "Dear Joshua, we saw the video of Shelby and Mr. Carter, and were moved by how far Shelby has come. Would you be open to a visit? We'd love to feature Shelby as an ambassador for rescue dogs." Joshua reread the email, his heart racing. Shelby's journey from a timid shelter dog to a symbol of resilience was nothing short of remarkable, but he worried about how she would handle the attention. "Shelby," he said, crouching down beside her. She tilted her head, her brown eyes curious. "Looks like you're famous now. Are you ready for this?" Her tail gave a small wag, as if answering his question. A few days later, the shelter's director, Rachel Myers, arrived at Joshua's home. She was a warm, energetic woman with a genuine passion for animals. Shelby, initially hesitant, watched her carefully from a distance. "She's come such a long way," Rachel said, watching Shelby with admiration. "When she first arrived at the shelter, she wouldn't even let us near her. Seeing her in this environment is incredible." Joshua nodded. "It's been a journey, but she's worth every moment." Rachel turned to him, her expression serious. "The video has sparked a lot of interest in our shelter. People are reaching out, asking how they can help. We think Shelby's story could inspire even more adoptions." Joshua hesitated. "You mean making her a sort of ambassador?" "Exactly," Rachel said. "Nothing overwhelming, just her story and how kindness made all the difference. It could help change people's perceptions of pit bulls." Joshua agreed, but only if Shelby's comfort came first. To ease her into it, they started with small steps, a photo shoot at the shelter and a short video sharing her story. Mr. Carter even agreed to participate, his bond with Shelby adding an extra layer of authenticity. On the day of the photo shoot, Shelby surprised everyone. Though still cautious, she allowed Rachel to pet her, and her tail wagged more confidently than ever before. As the camera clicked, capturing her gentle eyes and soft gray fur, Joshua felt a swell of pride. Shelby wasn't just overcoming her fears, she was helping others see the beauty of rescue dogs. But not everyone was thrilled about Shelby's newfound fame. One neighbor, known for his disdain of pit bulls, made a snide remark as Joshua walked Shelby down the street. "Careful with that dog. You never know when they'll snap." Joshua bristled, but kept walking. He knelt down to pet Shelby, who leaned into his touch. "Don't listen to him," he murmured. "You're proving them all wrong, one step at a time." Little did Joshua know, this wasn't the last time Shelby's breed would be unfairly judged. The challenges ahead would test their bond in ways they couldn't imagine. Shelby's progress had been steady and inspiring, but life had a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One crisp afternoon, Joshua decided to take Shelby to a local park for a change of scenery. It was her first outing outside the neighborhood since the video had gone viral. As they strolled along a tree-lined path, Shelby stayed close to Joshua's side, her leash taut, but her posture relaxed. People recognized her, some stopping to say hello, others simply smiling as they passed by. Shelby's tail wagged cautiously, and Joshua couldn't help but feel proud of how far she had come. The calm afternoon took a turn when another dog, an off-leash Labrador, came bounding toward Shelby. Startled, Shelby froze, her body stiffening as her ears flattened. Joshua immediately knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her back. "It's okay, Shelby. I'm here." The Labrador's owner jogged over, calling for their dog, but the damage was done. Shelby let out a sharp bark, pulling against her leash as fear overtook her. The commotion drew attention, and Joshua could feel the weight of judgmental stares from onlookers. "Control your dog," someone muttered under their breath, loud enough for Joshua to hear. "She's fine," Joshua said firmly, his focus on Shelby. He crouched lower, speaking softly. "It's okay, girl. You're safe." Shelby's breathing slowed as Joshua's calm presence anchored her. The Labrador's owner apologized profusely before walking away, but the incident left Shelby visibly shaken. That evening, Shelby curled up in her bed, her usually wagging tail tucked tightly under her body. Joshua sat beside her, stroking her fur. "I'm sorry, Shelby. I shouldn't have taken you there so soon." He felt a pang of guilt, questioning if he had pushed her too far. Just as they had started making strides, this setback reminded him of how fragile progress could be. The next day, Mr. Carter stopped by during his route. "You okay?" he asked, noticing the tension in Joshua's shoulders. Joshua nodded. "Shelby had a tough time at the park yesterday. It feels like we're back to square one." Mr. Carter knelt on the porch, his gentle presence immediately catching Shelby's attention. "Progress isn't always a straight line," he said, extending a treat toward Shelby. She sniffed it cautiously before taking it, her tail giving a tentative wag. "She's stronger than you think," Mr. Carter added. "And so are you." Joshua took those words to heart. Over the following days, he focused on rebuilding Shelby's confidence with smaller steps. They started with quiet walks around the neighborhood, avoiding crowded areas. Each time Shelby showed even the smallest sign of progress, Joshua celebrated her victories. Despite the setback, Shelby's resilience shone through. Slowly but surely, her tail began wagging more often, and the spark in her eyes returned. But as they moved forward, neither Joshua nor Shelby could anticipate the unexpected turn their story was about to take, one that would challenge their bond in ways they never imagined. The days following Shelby's setback were marked by careful steps forward. Joshua remained patient, determined to rebuild her confidence. But he couldn't shake the feeling that her progress was fragile. He often reflected on how far she'd come since leaving the shelter, but the weight of her past still loomed over them. Shelby wasn't just a dog. She was a survivor, and Joshua was committed to being the steady presence she needed. It was late fall when the storm arrived. The weather had been unpredictable all week, and Joshua had made sure to prepare the house for the high winds and rain that the news had warned about. Shelby had always been nervous during storms, her fear of loud noises evident in the way she tucked her tail and hid under furniture. Joshua spent the evening reassuring her, stroking her fur as thunder rumbled in the distance. "You're safe, Shelby," he whispered, his voice calm. "Nothing's going to hurt you." The rain began softly, a steady patter against the windows. But by midnight, the storm had intensified, shaking the house with each powerful gust of wind. Shelby paced anxiously, her paws clicking against the hardwood floor. Joshua tried everything to soothe her, from playing soft music to offering her favorite treats, but nothing seemed to work. As the storm raged on, a loud crack echoed through the neighborhood. Joshua rushed to the window and saw the source of the noise. A large tree had fallen across the street, blocking the road. The power flickered, then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. Shelby let out a startled bark, her body trembling as she pressed herself against Joshua's leg. He knelt down, wrapping his arms around her. "It's okay, girl. I'm here." The next morning, the storm had passed, but the damage was evident. The fallen tree had taken down power lines, leaving the neighborhood without electricity. Joshua decided to take Shelby outside to assess the situation. The air was crisp, and the scent of rain lingered as they stepped onto the porch. Shelby hesitated at the door, her ears twitching as she surveyed the unfamiliar scene. Joshua crouched beside her, holding the leash loosely. "We'll take it slow," he said, his voice steady. As they walked through the neighborhood, Shelby seemed more relaxed than Joshua had expected. The quiet aftermath of the storm provided a strangely calming atmosphere. Neighbors were outside, clearing debris and checking on one another. When they reached the corner of the block, Joshua noticed a small group gathered around Mr. Carter's street sweeper, which had been damaged by the storm. "Josh!" Mr. Carter called out, waving them over. "You're just the person I wanted to see." Joshua approached, Shelby staying close by his side. "What's going on?" "The storm knocked out my equipment," Mr. Carter explained. "But that's not the big news. People saw the video of Shelby again. It's circulating even more now, because of the storm. The shelter's been getting calls from folks wanting to help." Joshua raised an eyebrow. "Help how?" "Adoptions, donations, you name it," Mr. Carter said with a grin. "But here's the kicker. A local organization wants to sponsor an event featuring Shelby as the main inspiration." Joshua's heart raced. The idea of Shelby being in the spotlight again made him both proud and nervous. She had come so far, but the thought of putting her in a new, potentially overwhelming situation filled him with doubt. "I don't know if she's ready for that," Joshua admitted, glancing at Shelby, who was sniffing the ground nearby. Mr. Carter placed a reassuring hand on Joshua's shoulder. "I think she's stronger than you give her credit for, and so are you." The event was scheduled for the following weekend. In the days leading up to it, Joshua focused on preparing Shelby. They practiced walking through busier areas, meeting new people, and staying calm in unfamiliar environments. Shelby showed remarkable resilience, her trust in Joshua growing with each small success. On the day of the event, Joshua arrived early with Shelby at the community center, where it was being held. The room was decorated with banners and photos of rescue dogs, and a small stage had been set up for speeches. Shelby wore a new harness with a tag that read Ambassador, and Joshua couldn't help but smile at how far she'd come. As people began to arrive, Shelby stayed close to Joshua, her ears perking up at the sound of voices. Children approached cautiously, their parents asking if it was okay to pet her. Joshua knelt down beside Shelby, speaking softly. "It's your call, girl." To his surprise, Shelby stepped forward, her tail wagging gently as she allowed the children to stroke her fur. The smiles on their faces were contagious, and Joshua felt a swell of pride watching Shelby overcome her fears. When it was time for Joshua to speak, he led Shelby onto the stage. The room fell silent as he began to share her story. "This is Shelby," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "She came into my life when she needed a second chance, but what I didn't realize was how much I needed her too. Shelby taught me about patience, trust, and resilience. She's proof that even the most broken souls can heal with a little kindness." The audience erupted in applause, and Shelby stood tall beside Joshua, her tail wagging proudly. For the first time, she didn't seem afraid. She seemed to understand that this moment was hers. As the event came to a close, Rachel from the shelter approached Joshua. "You two have inspired so many people today," she said. "Shelby's story is going to change lives." Joshua smiled, looking down at Shelby. "She's already changed mine." That night, as they returned home, Shelby curled up beside Joshua on the couch. The storm that had once shaken her to her core felt like a distant memory. Together they had weathered it and come out stronger on the other side.
In the weeks following the event, Shelby's story continued to gain traction. The shelter saw an influx of interest from potential adopters, many of whom mentioned being inspired by the bond between Shelby and Joshua. For the first time, Shelby was no longer just a shy rescue dog. She had become a symbol of hope for other animals in need. Joshua was proud of her progress, but he remained cautious about overexposing her to situations that might overwhelm her. Shelby's comfort always came first, and he was determined to ensure that their journey continued at her pace. One afternoon, Rachel from the shelter called with a new proposal. "Joshua, I've been contacted by a local TV station," she began. "They want to feature Shelby in a segment about the impact of rescue dogs. It's a short interview, nothing too stressful, but I think it could make a big difference." Joshua hesitated. While he was thrilled that Shelby's story was helping others, he worried about how she would handle being in a studio environment. "I'll think about it," he said. "I just want to make sure it's the right decision for her." After discussing it with Rachel and Mr. Carter, Joshua decided to give it a try. The segment would be filmed in a quiet setting, with minimal crew and plenty of breaks to ensure Shelby felt comfortable. On the day of the interview, Joshua arrived at the studio with Shelby by his side. The staff greeted them warmly, keeping their distance to avoid overwhelming Shelby. The set was simple: a cozy couch surrounded by soft lighting, with a backdrop of images featuring happy, adopted pets. Shelby was initially wary, her ears twitching as she took in her unfamiliar surroundings. Joshua knelt beside her, offering gentle words of encouragement. "You're okay, Shelby. I'm right here." The host, a kind woman named Linda, approached slowly, kneeling a few feet away. "Hi, Shelby," she said softly, holding out her hand. Shelby sniffed cautiously before wagging her tail, a small but meaningful sign of trust. The interview began with Joshua sharing Shelby's journey, from her difficult past to her newfound role as an ambassador for rescue dogs. "When I adopted Shelby, she was scared of everything," he explained. "But with time, patience, and a lot of love, she's become the brave, incredible dog you see today." Shelby lay calmly at Joshua's feet, her tail thumping softly against the floor. When the host asked about her favorite activities, Joshua chuckled. "She loves her walks, but more than anything, she loves spending time in the garden. That's her happy place." The segment ended with a message of encouragement for viewers to consider adopting rescue animals. "Shelby's story is proof that every dog deserves a second chance," Joshua said. "It's not always easy, but the rewards are immeasurable." As they left the studio, Joshua felt a surge of pride. Shelby had handled the experience with grace, and her calm demeanor had touched everyone she met. Even the camera crew couldn't resist snapping a few pictures with her before she left. That evening, back at home, Joshua sat on the couch with Shelby curled up beside him. He scrolled through his phone, reading messages from viewers who had seen the segment. One comment stood out. "Shelby's story gives me hope. I've been thinking about adopting, and now I know it's the right decision." Joshua smiled, stroking Shelby's fur. You're changing the world, girl." As Shelby drifted off to sleep, Joshua reflected on how far they had come. From a timid rescue dog to a symbol of resilience, Shelby had not only transformed her own life, but had also inspired countless others to believe in the power of second chances. Shelby's transformation from a timid rescue dog to a beacon of hope had been nothing short of extraordinary. Her story, now widely shared through social media and television, had inspired countless people to reconsider their perceptions of pit bulls and rescue animals. Joshua, her steadfast companion, could hardly believe how far they had come. As he sat with Shelby in the garden one crisp morning, he marveled at how this once scared dog had touched the hearts of so many. The upcoming adoption fair at the local shelter promised to be the pinnacle of Shelby's journey. Rachel, the shelter director, had personally invited Joshua and Shelby to attend, explaining how Shelby's presence could make a significant difference. "She's more than just a dog now, Joshua," Rachel had said. "She's a symbol of hope and resilience." Joshua had agreed without hesitation, though he still harbored a tinge of doubt. Shelby had come a long way, but he wanted to ensure the event wouldn't overwhelm her. Over the days leading up to the fair, he worked on preparing her for the bustling environment. They practiced walking through busy streets, meeting new people, and remaining calm in unfamiliar settings. Each small success reminded Joshua of Shelby's remarkable resilience. On the morning of the event, Joshua dressed Shelby in her special ambassador harness, the tag gleaming in the sunlight. As they arrived at the shelter's outdoor venue, a wave of excitement rippled through the crowd. The air buzzed with the sound of cheerful chatter, children's laughter, and the occasional bark of a dog. Shelby's ears perked up as she surveyed the scene, her tail wagging cautiously. Joshua crouched down beside her, giving her a reassuring pat. "You've got this, Shelby. Just be yourself." As they walked through the crowd, people turned to watch, many recognizing Shelby from her viral video. Children approached with wide-eyed curiosity, asking if they could pet her. Shelby, once so wary of strangers, now stepped forward with gentle confidence, allowing their small hands to stroke her fur. One little girl, clutching a flyer for the shelter, knelt beside Shelby and looked up at Joshua. "She's so pretty. Is she really a rescue?" Joshua smiled. "She is. Shelby's proof that rescue dogs are just as amazing as any other dog. They just need someone to believe in them." The girl turned to her parents, her eyes shining with determination. "Can we adopt a dog today?" The parents exchanged a glance before nodding. "Let's go see who's waiting for us," the father said, taking the girl's hand and leading her toward the adoption booths. Throughout the day, Joshua and Shelby met dozens of people, each interaction reinforcing the impact of their story. Shelby's calm demeanor and gentle nature won over even the most skeptical attendees. One man, who admitted he had always been wary of pit bulls, approached Joshua hesitantly. "I'll be honest," the man said, scratching the back of his neck. "I've always thought these dogs were dangerous, but seeing Shelby, it's changed my mind." Joshua nodded, appreciating the man's honesty. "It's not uncommon for people to have misconceptions about pit bulls. Shelby was scared and misunderstood when I first met her, but she's shown me, and now the world, how incredible these dogs can be." The man crouched down, extending a hand toward Shelby. She sniffed it cautiously before nudging his palm with her nose. The man smiled, clearly moved by the gesture. "Maybe it's time I reconsidered what I thought I knew." As the event drew to a close, Rachel took the stage to deliver a heartfelt speech. She spoke about the importance of rescue work and how stories like Shelby's could change perceptions and inspire action. Every dog deserves a second chance, she said, her voice filled with emotion. And thanks to Joshua and Shelby, we've seen just how powerful that second chance can be. When Rachel called Joshua and Shelby up to join her, the crowd erupted in applause. Joshua held Shelby's leash firmly, his heart swelling with pride as they stepped onto the stage. Shelby stood tall beside him, her tail wagging steadily as she surveyed the crowd. "This is Shelby," Joshua began, his voice steady but emotional. "She came into my life when she needed a second chance, but what I didn't realize was how much I needed her too. Shelby has taught me about patience, trust, and resilience. She's proof that even the most broken souls can heal with a little kindness." The crowd listened intently, many wiping away tears as Joshua continued. "I hope Shelby's story inspires you to consider adoption, to open your heart to an animal in need. They might come with scars, but they'll also give you a love that's unlike anything else." After the speech, people lined up to meet Shelby. Children, families, and even elderly couples took turns petting her, their smiles reflecting the joy she brought. Shelby handled the attention with grace, her once timid nature replaced by a quiet confidence. One young couple approached Joshua with a question. "We've been thinking about adopting a dog, but we're worried we won't know how to handle a rescue. What advice would you give?" Joshua smiled warmly. "It takes patience, understanding, and a willingness to learn, but the bond you'll form is worth every challenge. Rescue dogs like Shelby just need to know they're safe and loved. The rest will follow." The couple nodded, inspired by his words. "Thank you," the woman said. "We're going to visit the shelter right now." As the sun began to set, the event wound down. Rachel approached Joshua, her expression glowing with pride. "You two have done something incredible today," she said. "Shelby's story has reached so many people, and I know it's going to lead to more lives being saved." Joshua looked down at Shelby, who was sitting calmly by his side. "She's the incredible one," he said, scratching behind her ears. "I'm just lucky to be part of her story." That evening, as they returned home, Joshua and Shelby sat together in the garden. The soft glow of the sunset bathed the flowers in warm light, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine. Shelby lay beside Joshua, her head resting on his lap as he stroked her fur. "You've come so far, Shelby," Joshua said softly, "and you've brought so much good into the world. I couldn't be prouder of you." Shelby's tail thumped against the ground, her way of saying she understood. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the peace they had both worked so hard to find, Joshua felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Shelby had changed his life in ways he never could have imagined. And now, her story was changing the world, one heart, one family, and one rescue at a time. If Shelby's story touched your heart, let us know in the comments below. Share your own stories of rescue animals or how they've impacted your life. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring tale like this one. Together, let's spread the message of hope, second chances, and unconditional love.